born in Ecuador and then kind of raised all over the place. So by the age of 13, I had lived in 8 countries. And yeah, what I do is I coach one on one or workshops on kind of an updated, with a dash of comedy, sex ed for adults and people in relationships, people struggling with their sexuality, people married for a decade who just lost the spark, don't want to leave each other. It goes from everything from sexual problems to relationship issues to just basic life issues, like the way you relate to your life, to your profession, to what you do on a regular basis, to your health, exercise, all that kind of good stuff.
Okay. So you're kind of like a one-stop shop for someone that really needs to get their life together.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to ask you about any of your current clients. Do you have any background in the medical profession?
Yeah. So I used to work for the Red Cross and I would do counseling, coaching for people that had just gone through a disaster or had escaped war or, yeah, were asylum seekers, that kind of thing. And they trained us there for just basic psychological recovery from natural disasters and war. But it was a lot of red tape. So you couldn't give anybody a hug. You couldn't really give any comfort outside of the like written on paper guidelines of how to treat someone in trauma,
Mm-hmm.
which I actually found only traumatized them a little bit more. Still really love the Red Cross, absolutely great organization. But for me personally, I like a more multidimensional approach to healing and to life. So I left and studied nutrition as a way to tackle some of the harder things like diabetes and heart disease, especially in firemen who have a horrible diet. It's a whole other branch of my life. But that led me to Eastern medicine, which led me to reflexology, which led me to my last school, which was integrative sexuality, basically studying anything from like Tantra and Taoism to anatomy, biology, neuropsychology, just the whole body system in every avenue.
Wow. Wow. Sounds like you've been doing all your background.
That's a mouthful, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we appreciate your help. We appreciate
Yeah,
your service.
absolutely. It's good to know that you went and actually studied the topics and researched the background versus, I mean, life experience is good, but also having that background information is good too. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with trauma, I think that kind of sneaks up on all of us. And if you don't know how to navigate it, can either be made worse by certain coaches or, yeah, exacerbated.
So,
Awesome.
the first question I want to ask you about is, I mean, I hate to just dive so deep into it quickly, but sexual codependency. I went through the concept and I've really been going over it with a couple of friends, and I really want you to explain to the audience what sexual codependency is as you
It's
see it.
that you connected deeply with this one because I think that this is like what haunts most long-term relationships most is this kind of expectation that your partner needs to fulfill all of your sexual needs. So codependency itself got really big around just relationships and how people handle friendships and attachment and all that stuff back in the day. But sexual codependency is where your only way to be happy and your only way to get satisfaction and the only way that you identify as having a successful sexual life is through your partner satisfying your needs or you guys having a thriving sex life. So it puts an unfair pressure and an unrealistic pressure on most relationships because a number of things can happen. There can be physical accidents that your partner maybe ends up in a wheelchair for like 6 months, or there can just be like depression, which so many of us go through, that has a direct impact on especially the masculine body. And not allowing space for kind of life to happen and preparing people for how to take care of their own needs in this like deeply satisfying manner sets up long-term marriages for a ton of resentment, for a ton of if my partner doesn't want to have sex, it means I automatically have a terrible sex life or am not having sex because they're not having sex. And that's just if you're a very sexual partnership. I mean, if you're someone who's maybe living in middle America who wasn't even taught about masturbation, then your dependency sexually on your partner is even more exacerbated because you don't even know that there are other avenues for you to satisfy yourself or explore the multidimensional aspects of your own body and its pleasure and how to use it and maximize it for your own performance. That's a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. It's a lot.
But it makes sense. It makes sense though.
Why does it make sense to you? Explain to me why it makes sense to you.
Well, think about it. If you don't explore other avenues, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, like some guys even shy away from just masturbation. They'll be like, oh man, well, I mean, unless you're like, Mick Jagger or you're Brad Pitt or Idris Alba, and you can just get it like that. It's just so easy. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you should think about some other options. And sometimes you don't actually want another person. Sometimes you just kind of want to take care of yourself real fast. There's nothing wrong with that. You just want to explore taking care of you. You know, and if you don't ever do that, yeah, when you get with somebody, you can pull out a pressure on them. Oh man, I didn't get what I didn't. I don't feel like I got fulfilled in that session there. Like, oh, my person's letting me down. Like you start looking elsewhere, start to wander.
You're saying that like we're in a basketball game. Like, yo, you're not hitting shots. But Jennifer, let me ask you a question. If you're dating somebody or you get married or whatever it is, and you guys are in a committed relationship, right? I mean, isn't that the point to kind of put that person? I hate to say like in charge, but they're like shouldn't they have some type of responsibility to you to make sure that you're pleased and happy sexually in the relationship?
There's like no faster way to kill a sex drive than to expect it from someone. It's just especially from women, because there's just all this underlying conditioning that it's expected from us, and the female body can be quite fickle around it. So without the expectation, female bodies are, and I don't know how up to date you guys are with the science, but typically it was seen like, oh, men are sexual beings, men are the ones that like really need to get satisfied constantly. Now that science is being reversed, it's actually very, very at least equal, that both sexes need and have that like drive to get sexually satisfied. The variation just happens to be from person to person more than anything, and societal conditioning. So I do think the sexual health of a relationship is the responsibility of both people. But that also includes, if your partner's like, I feel terrible about my body, how you approach that problem to then get to what you want, which is a thriving sexual life, is gonna define whether or not you are successful in that goal, right? If you're like, well, no, I wanna have sex anyway, even if you feel shitty, your partner's probably gonna shut down or, God forbid, perform for you, which is terrible sex, and just kind of like go through the motions with you. It's gonna leave you feeling gross, them feeling gross. It's a gross habit. Or you're like, great, I'll help you get fit. Let's do this together. And just that action of the teamwork and the generating of all these sweaty endorphins together to get you guys feeling good physically, it's going to end up in a much better sex life. But that's a very different approach than like, you owe me a good sex life just because we're in a relationship.
You don't be obligated. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, right? I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm not trying to be confrontational. I completely agree with what you're saying, but men, so men have a refractory period. If you have sex, it's going to take about 10, 15 minutes. Some guys longer, some guys shorter. When I was in my younger years, it was a lot shorter if I cared. But women don't have a refractory period. So how does a man get up after having sex? And if he cares and loves his woman, how does he get up and not feel responsible for her not achieving orgasm? I mean,
Great question. I mean, if you're a guy and you aren't in any way thinking of your woman's pleasure, it's your sex life probably isn't great. I mean, at some point, both people should be considering like and communicating like, do you want to orgasm during this experience or afterwards? Like, how are you feeling about orgasming? Or really hyper communicating around it because there are a ton of habits where men aren't going to necessarily automatically do something they don't feel they can be successful at because it will cause disconnection. So they might subconsciously avoid the topic altogether of the female orgasm if they don't think that they are going to be good at it, or if they've fucked it up a lot in the past and it's caused like a lot of disconnection. It's just going to be kind of the go-to to avoid it a little bit. What that causes in the woman is a shit ton of resentment. So the way to tackle that is like just talk about it. Talk about it. And if it sucked when you last tried to pleasure your woman, like get her to teach you. Get her to teach you how she works because women are so different. They're so different. There's no expectation that any man should just be good with one woman. The next woman's going to be a totally different machine. Totally different machine.
Okay.
To
So,
answer your
okay. Again, I'm just pushing it back a little bit on this. I'm just pushing back a little bit. So, no one wants to feel. No one wants to have expectations on their partner or standards placed. You have standards for yourself, but you don't want to place those same standards on your partner, right? But how long can a relationship last if one of you is on, I guess, sexual strike or or type of sexual hold where they're done? Like I don't know, they just don't feel sexy, or maybe the man is in the middle of something in his life, depression, PTSD, all types of things that stop you from your sex drive getting up and started, right? You know, how what's is there a time limit on how much the other partner has to kind of like find themselves and pleasure themselves before they kind of look at their partner and say, okay, this is just not working for me? Or is the relationship supposed to be built on something stronger than that and you can get past that?
I guess it depends where you are in the relationship and how ready you are to like deeply commit to somebody. It also depends on like where you guys are headed. So if you're talking to someone and you guys were planning for a family and a life together and suddenly they go on sexual strike, really communicating with them like, is this how you want to spend the rest of your life? Or do you one day want to get to the sex life that I want for my life? And then if they say no, I mean, I think even though it would be really hard, it is like making a decision based on separate values, right? Like you wouldn't want to stay with someone that doesn't believe in marriage if your goal is to believe in marriage is to get married one day. Same with this. If you suddenly find that your partner's like, sex isn't really important to me, or I've had some couples in the past where one person finds out that they're asexual, um, you kind of have to make that decision
Yeah.
of breaking up or staying together. Do you want an asexual life? If the answer is no, unfortunately, you gotta kind of move on.
Well, some people are just sexually incompatible. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
some people's drive up here, and some people are here, and some people are down there. And while for a while these two people may work for a little while, I mean, this person is like constantly on go. So maybe other options may be better for them, because I don't want to speak for myself,
You should
but
speak for
it's
yourself.
like I'm ready, like I be ready. I'm
So,
here.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, when I was 21 and the person I'm with was 21, what we were doing at the time was different, so it allowed them to kind of roll with that. But now things have changed quite a bit, and now I'm still kind of like that.
Yeah.
But they've slowed down quite a bit. Now they still like to get, but they have more worries and more things on their mind, and they're just not focused on it like me.
How old are
Like,
they?
huh?
How old are they?
35.
All right, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm 33. Yeah.
Because typically, I mean, it can vary, but women, once they get to their 30s, can go either way. Either they get really excited and really sexual or not. Were you guys sexual at the beginning? Like, really sexual?
Yeah, but it was because that person kind of was. more like really like adventurous. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
The Indiana
I,
Jones
I
of sex.
I've already had adventure. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just like, hey, it just feels great. You know what I'm saying? I just want to keep going. So, you know, but though I like to try things too, though I'm an adventurer.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, let's try that. You know?
Well, that's great news for you because essentially, so when you first meet someone, just assume your brain is on drugs, like for that year at the very least. And again, it varies for people. Like on ecstasy for an entire year. You're making irrational decisions, you're over functioning. It's amazing. And you're coasting on this like chemistry. Now, like if you go to the gym and work out one muscle for an entire year, it's going to atrophy. It's just not going to build anymore. The same exact thing happens. Your body regulates to that stimulation so that it can function normally in all the other priorities you have. And eventually, without any new stimulation in it, whether that's you guys are trying new things or putting some energy into the sexual relationship, it's just going to plateau for the foreseeable future until you put some new stuff in there, some new energy in there, some new attention in there. It won't just do that by itself. Like you won't just have a six pack by itself because you had it once. You have to keep maintaining it. You have to keep variety. So if you had it once, that's the best indicator that you can get back to that and make it 10 times better. 10 times better. It's way easier to make your sex life amazing once you guys actually know each other.
So basically, you're saying the more vocal or more conversation you have with your partner, the better. And what if they're not open to it though? What if you get into a situation where you're open to conversation, but they're not so much because of how maybe how they were raised, or
Yeah.
there's a number of different things that make people uncomfortable with talking about sex. Especially even with their husbands, they just like, ugh, I don't. Can't we just do it?
Yeah, typically what will be important there is to first introduce the notion that there's no urgency. Like you guys have the rest of your lives to figure this out. But also really communicating how important this aspect of life is and what it brings to the relationship. Intimacy, connection, adventure, freedom, all of these things that we don't get a lot of access to when we have to wake up and go to work and raise kids and come home and be responsible, right? It's this access to wilderness, to being wild, to being uncontained. So really positioning in a way where it might appeal to them as well. What do they hold as important? And then integrate that into what the sex life could bring into it. And then kind of figure out what's holding them back. What is it that they're afraid of in the conversation? If it's, religion, then that's a really important obstacle you guys are going to have to face at some point or another.
There's a hurdle, yeah.
Talking about that shame, integrating that culture a little bit and getting over that together is going to be vital.
Yeah.
So again, not forcing it, but really positioning it like at some point in the next 60 years, I would love it if we could freely talk about this. What do
In the
you
next
need?
60 years, Jesus. You are a patient woman, Jesus. I tell you, after 60 days, I might just be like, oh, this might not be for me.
But
It's in the very
it's
future,
funny.
but
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go on.
No, I was like, it's funny when I speak to some guys about stuff like this, and they're some of them. Sometimes you like to take your time and explore things and talk about things. And you're like, man, I'd like to try this. I'd like to try that. It's interesting to me. I mean, if we're gonna be there, why not have a little bit of fun with it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then some people are like, while I do like the feeling, I'm all about getting the task done. Like in their head, they're like this. I just got to get this feeling out of my body. Like I asked the guy, I said, when you finish, what's the first thing you do? Right? He was
Sandwiches?
like, he's like, I feel like doing like another task, like right away. Like it's like he's like, oh, I could go do my taxes, or I could go, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know. And I told a friend, she said, I'm trying to get my guy to do this. I said, right after you finish, I want you to suggest something to him immediately. I guarantee he'll either go to sleep or he'll get up and go do it. Like, you know what? Yeah, yeah.
Well,
You
maybe
want
that's
some
the
part
time to request
what?
something sexually, right? Maybe that's the perfect time.
Maybe that's manipulation. Maybe that's wrong.
Is it? Oh, that's a great question. Is it manipulation to once he, I guess, climax to be like, well, now he's really malleable. How about you spend the next 20 minutes down low?
My wife could suggest a lot of things. I'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna go build this fort. I'm gonna go build this fort.
Absolutely. I think you'd have to ask how he feels about that, but they're fine with it. Why not?
I'll do it right away.
Just to kind of get a little bit of background, like what made you want to go into this specifically? Is saying like, okay, everybody wants to run their own business, and people come up with, I'm going to open up a store, but not a lot of people say I'm going to become a sex coach or a relationship coach. A lot of people were ready to delve into other people's personal lives. Is there something in your life that made you gravitate to it?
Yeah, I think when I was really young, I wanted to fix my parents' mistake. My mom's Latin and my dad is Russian, so
Yeah.
lots of passion there. Let's put it that way. And that essentially drove it. So when I was 6, I was reading up on like psychology, different communication tactics, like a tiny little nerd. Um, and then also my grandmother was in the Holocaust, so she came over from Russia, and she would just kind of drop me off in libraries for hours when she was dealing with PTSD. And at the time, I would just kind of research relationships to kind of help me relate to her. So it started pretty young, and now it's just like my favorite subject. It does not get old. So that essentially led to sexuality, because that seems to be this gray zone that people don't talk about, but that rules their access to physical pleasure on a daily basis, whether in a relationship or single. So it's a pretty powerful kind of break of habit in giving people things like energy, motivation, and just the experience of pleasure.
So, going back to what we were talking about before, I have a question for you. So, obviously, when you first begin dating somebody, it's amazing, and it's kind of going back to the name of the show. Are you the greatest lover they've ever had? Right? How do you keep that going? I mean, your communication, we get that. We get that. But does the other person have any true responsibility to keep that going? I mean, is that codependency? It's like, oh, well, we met. Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say you meet him and his upkeep is amazing. He's shaved down there and he goes to the barbershop. He runs every day and he brings roses. He's just a very attentive person. And obviously when you get to the point of when you're about to lay down together, it's amazing. It's like, oh my God, this guy is just completely into me. And then we fast forward like 1 year later, and the stomach's kind of coming out, and he's not like manscaping anymore. How much responsibility is it on him to kind of keep up with what he was doing to keep the relationship as amazing as it was, or is it none of his responsibility? It's like, hey, you're here, because
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, great question. Great question. So there is no bigger motivating factor for a man than the actual experience of his woman, right? So unfortunately, women have been taught to communicate by like telling the guy what to do, which is gonna cause a lot of resistance and resentment in you guys. But if the woman you're with just shows you the impact of what that change feels like in her body without necessarily like actively criticizing you or anything like that, it's gonna inspire a whole lot of like you wanting to be better, because when you are more fit or more healthy in yourself, you can actively see the impact it has on her desire for you, on or like she can't keep her hands off of you. You guys are clearly having sex all the time. Like it, if you're using your woman's like own body and state of being as a compass to like how happy and satisfied she is with you, really tuning into how that attraction health is in the relationship, it can be quite inspiring. That's pretty advanced though. I don't think many relationships communicate like that. Women have been trained to function in a very masculine way to get things done during the day, and they don't really practice turning that off at night. And it is not erotic to a man to then come to his beautiful, soft woman who's like here's the goal of the night. I need you to work out. I need you to manscape. It's like a huge order for you guys.
Let's go, Marine.
But like, I also think like there's people, like not man or woman, but both sides in general. Like when you focus on the self first, and you improve yourself, and you improve your whatever finance or your physical or whatever it may be, you build your self confidence, and you come to somebody, you come with a whole different air to you, and you don't, to some people you don't need the validation because you're confident in yourself, and that people can see that confidence and they see how you approach things, and in a way, I mean, it's beneficial. Usually, most of the time, it's beneficial for everybody. It spreads. It's contagious. Oh, he came in the bedroom. Look at him. He had hit the gym today. This guy's been maintaining. He doesn't need me to tell him he looks good because he knows he looks good. And now he's about to show me all these gains he's been working on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you know what I'm saying? And you be like, I know she's digging my. You know what I'm saying? I don't need her to tell me I look good because I know because all the ladies in the gym told me I look good today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but all right. So let me pose that to you, Jennifer. So he's super confident and he loves himself, and I guess I always hear confidence is sexy, But on that same note, I feel like overconfidence can breed, a place where you start to ignore her. Like you're like, oh, well, I'm so into myself right now that you're not. Is it more important to look for her cues and try to, play that piano so she's happy, or is it more important for you to kind of just be yourself and just say, hey, I'm a sexy dude, I don't care what you do, I'm gonna do what I do, and just hope that she's gonna be turned on by that?
If you're like feeling good about yourself is coming from it's warranted, like you killed it today, you worked out, you feel amazing about life and yourself. If someone has a problem with that, it's typically because maybe they're not feeling that same thing. And so again, like if your woman comes to you or starts jabbing at you or your man about being cocky or overly confident, again, instead of taking it personally, kind of turning it around, like, how are you feeling about yourself? Like, how can I help you feel as good as I feel? Because ideally, we want everyone to feel amazing about themselves and learn to like, I think cockiness really only comes from when it's like maybe not so warranted. Like if you haven't gone to the gym and you're just talking about how like beautiful you are and how ugly everybody else is, maybe someone's gonna have a problem with that because of the critical aspect of it.
Yeah.
I'm very douchebaggy. Yeah, at that point.
So there's a line. There's a line.
There's a line. Yeah.
What is that line? What is the line between douchebaggery and love? I don't know.
The judgy aspect, like, are you then elevating yourself above everybody else and criticizing everybody else? That's just like a gross charged energy that no one wants to be around. Whereas like if you just feel good about life and yourself, that's pretty appealing. It's just like attractive to mostly all of us because that's what we're striving for in all of this. And when you're talking about like, yeah, you can go to the gym, you feel good about yourself, people can feel that. That's kind of what I'm talking about around masturbation, like sexual codependency for men. If your woman's not feeling sexual, and instead of being like, I'm miserable, I shouldn't have married you, you're like, all right, I'm going to go discover all of the multiple orgasms I can have as a man. Some part of that woman eventually is going to be like, wait, what are you doing? Like, I want to come in. I want to do some of that.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And men and women, but a lot of men, like that guy you were talking about that said that right after orgasm, he feels like he wants to do another task. That can come from the habit of like rubbing one out. So you've got porn, you're entering porn at a heightened level of stimulation. So you're hijacking your entire brain to get into like the middle of hardcore sex. There's no foreplay, no like warming up your body to it. And then you're basically trying to get it over with as soon as you can, right? And then when you just like move on your day without meaning to, that is cultivating how you orgasm, how you experience everything that has to do with your sexuality. So it doesn't surprise me that it's like, all right, we're done, next thing. It's not the best way that you guys can feel around orgasm. I'm not shitting on porn. It's just that there are other ways to watch it that can actually improve your sex in the long term.
Yeah, I always hear porn is to please yourself if you're a man. Listen, what $2 billion a year and no one's watching it, I'm absolutely watching porn. But I do get to a point sometime where I feel porn shamed. It's like, oh my god, you're doing this. You're a terrible man. You're a terrible man. Why don't you get a book?
I feel like porn is very task oriented. The guy's like, all right, I got like 5 to 10 minutes. All right, okay, I got a good scene. I know. Let me go to the bookmarks. Let's go to the bookmarks.
Actually, I'll actually ask you another question that kind of sets that up. So let's say you have a sexual experience with your girlfriend, your wife, whoever you feel sexual codependency with, and you know,
Yeah.
and let's say you don't finish, because I mean, I've said this to people before, because a man ejaculates doesn't necessarily mean he's orgasmed. He just ejaculated. So if after that, you look at the person,